Hebrews chapter 13, verse 15 and 16. By him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of praise to God continually, that is, the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. But to do good and to communicate, forget not, for with such sacrifices God is well pleased. The title this morning of part 1 is Enthusiasm versus Apathy. Enthusiasm versus apathy. Which is lacking? Both are lacking. In order to obey the admonitions contained in our text, believers must be enthused about serving God. If we are to be engaged as acceptable service, perpetual praise, and thanksgiving to God, the energizing element of enthusiasm must be operating in our lives. Enthusiasm is an outward expression of an inward joy that enables us to serve the Lord with gladness. Certainly, there is not a greater thing in the entire world to be enthusiastic about than serving our gracious Lord. As we consider the glory of the Lord, the majesty of his grace, and his claims upon us, our hearts should be bursting with enthusiastic devotion to him. Turn over to the book of Psalms, if you would, chapter 42. Psalms 42. And verses 1 and 2. As the hart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? And then going to 142 of Psalms. Psalms 142 and verse 6. Attend unto my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. So the first point we want to look at this morning is the elements of enthusiasm. The elements of enthusiasm. What is it that will give us the enthusiasm that we need to serve God? I mean, we get enthusiastic about other things, you know. We get enthusiastic about sports. We get enthusiastic about, going to different events, maybe in our family or whatever it may be. We get excited about those things. But the excitement that we should have, the elements of enthusiasm should be toward God. And again, first and foremost is what we should be looking at when we're getting excited about something. And I hope that, you're excited about being here this morning. I mean, many times we say, well, I can hardly wait till church comes or Sunday comes so we can be in the house of God. And it pulls us away. I mean, we all know that this is a safe haven. We are confident, and one day we may not be as confident, but we are confident that everything that is done here is done in comfort, and we're not worried about anything on the outside world. We're not worried about the things that are going on right now in our society. I mean, a lot of times the world may be close to being dealt with just like Thursday. I mean, we haven't had rain for like almost 20 days, and all of a sudden we get this rain, and then on top of the rain we get, tornadoes. So we never know what to expect. So when we're in here, we pretty much expect that it's going to be a peaceful, comforting, stress-free place to be. We don't have to worry about anything on the outside. So enthusiasm requires a lively, absorbing interest in something that is worthy of our attention and involvement. So when we get enthusiastic about something, I mean, some of us may get enthusiastic about our jobs, can hardly wait to get to work the next day, which I doubt, but I mean, some people do because that's all they have. But it is hard to be enthused about something that does not captivate our interest or appeal to us. So there may be some that church doesn't appeal. And we know that that's true because as nice as it is today, the sun's shining, it's warming up, and the last place many people want to be is in church. They don't want to be in church. A lot of the excuses, well, I don't have time to do the other things that I want to do. So they sacrifice going to church so they can do these other things because they're working 6 days a week. That's the excuse that I've always heard. Well, I'm working, and why do I want to spend my day in church? Well, why don't you want to spend your day in church, see? We have to take a look, and if you are you enthused about it? So it's hard to be enthused about something that doesn't captivate us or our interest. When the Holy Spirit imparts spiritual life to the elect in the new birth, He also gives them a keen interest in and desire for the things of God. You may not have had an interest in God before you were saved. And you may have used every excuse in the book to keep yourself out of church for whatever reason it may be. Turn to 1 Peter chapter 1, if you would. 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to His abundant mercy hath begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Then verse 15. But as He which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation. Now, it was kind of strange. Last week, my wife and I, we had to go to the attorneys. We had a hiccup in our will, so we had to get it changed. And while we were in there, our attorney is a Christian man, and at least I hope so, because there's a lot of people that say they're saved and they act really religious, but then when you sit down and you talk to them for a little bit, it's like you scratch your head and say, where does this come from? So anyway, he's telling us this story, and I can't remember the people that were involved, but the one person was upset with themselves because they got a strong feeling, and I can't remember now who it was, either their mom or dad or somebody that had died. And they were feeling guilty because they wanted to see that person before they wanted to see Jesus. And it's like, okay, I'm sitting there listening to what he said, and the response to that was, that's okay. You go ahead and when you get to heaven, you look for whoever you're missing now. That's ludicrous. I mean, that is absolutely not acceptable. Why in the world would you be looking for somebody humanly when you know what Jesus did for you on the cross? Why wouldn't he be the first person that you want to see? He's the one that paid the price. We wouldn't even be where we are if it wasn't for Jesus Christ. So why would we not want to see him? I understand the human emotional part of wanting to see our loved ones. But they probably caused us, even though we loved them, they probably caused us more pain than anything somewhere in our life. And Jesus didn't cause us any pain. He saved us from hell. So why wouldn't we want to see him first of all? I mean, we're going to have eternity there, so just tell the person, say, well, Jesus is the one you should be looking for. The rest of the people, you got eternity to visit with. So it was like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, none at all. I couldn't even believe that a person would, well, I wouldn't want to be standing too close when the lightning hit, because that's just about the way I kind of like, But it gave me an uneasy feeling when I heard it. And I'm just thinking, I don't understand how Christians can just throw that stuff in there. Look at chapter 2 of 1 Peter. And verse 2 and 3. As newborn babes desiring the sincere milk of the word. And look what it says there. They desire this. It's not that they're force-fed the milk of the word. It's a desire. So, as newborn babes desiring the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. If so be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious. Now look at verse 9 through 12. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into marvelous light. So see there's the person we need to be looking after. This is the person we need to want to see, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. So there's a point there that, we have a desire for the sincere milk of the word. And we should, just like a baby, they crave the milk. They have to be fed. If they're not fed, then they starve. And you're sure not going to give a baby a steak, So they're going to desire that sincere milk of the word. Turn over to Nehemiah chapter 1. Nehemiah chapter 1, we see Nehemiah's keen interest. Well, let me get there. My Bible is not cooperating this morning. In Nehemiah chapter 1, we see Nehemiah's keen interest in the condition of Jerusalem and the rebuilding of the wall, promoted him to engage in earnest prayer to God. Now look, chapter 1 there in verse 3. And they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there is the providence, are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, Nehemiah, when I heard these words, that I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven, and said, I beseech thee, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. Let thine ear now be attentive, and thine eyes open, that thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night, for the children of Israel, thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have dealt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou commanded thy servant Moses. Remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, if you transgress, I will scatter you abroad among the nations. But if ye turn unto me, and keep my commandments, and do them, though there were of you cast out unto the uttermost parts of heaven, yet will I gather them from thence, and I will bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name there. Now these are thy servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power and by thy strong hand. O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant, and to the prayer of thy servants who desire to fear thy name and prosper. I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. So Nehemiah's pretty much pouring out his soul to God. And he's telling him that, he's including himself in this. I have sinned, the people have sinned, and we need to get back on the straight and narrow. He then enthusiastically set out to rebuild the wall for the glory of God. Now, if you've read it, that's what he did. And he was given everything that was needed, the letters, the material, everything that he needed to do this, the monies to do it. And when we look at this, we have to say, that God would likewise stir our interest in serving him. I mean, that was a great feat to do this wall. Another element of enthusiasm is holy zeal. Turn to Galatians, if you would. Galatians chapter 4 and verse 18. But it is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing, and not only when I am present with you. And Paul is saying, I know how you get excited when I come. But he said, I want you to be zealous before I do, even if I'm not there. And I know how we get excited when we have maybe a guest speaker in, or we go to a conference. We get excited, we get enthusiastic. But we need to do that all the time, not just pick and choose. Then look at Colossians chapter 4. Colossians chapter 4, and look at verse 12 and 13. Epaphras, who is one of you, a servant of Christ, saluteth you, always laboring fervently for you in prayers, that ye may stand perfect and complete in all the will of God. For I bear him record that he hath a great zeal for you, and them that are in Laodicea, and then in Hierapolis. So we see that Epaphras, he had this zeal for God's people. So it doesn't matter who God's people are, you should have a zeal for them and knowing, it's exciting when, when you meet maybe a stranger or meet somebody that you've not met before and find out they're a Christian, right? I mean, it's kind of an exciting thing that, this is great, because sometimes we don't really anticipate that we're going to meet another Christian along our way, and then when we do, it's very exciting. Titus 2:14. In Titus 2:14 it says, "Who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from all iniquity and purify unto himself," look at this, "a peculiar people, zealous of good works." So we are supposed to be zealous. It shouldn't be something that we dread. It should be something that we're, zealous about in serving God. Now, David showed his enthusiasm for the glory and honor of God when he zealously cried out, "Is there not a cause?" And I've preached on this before. Is there not a cause in 1 Samuel 17:29? You may want to take a look at that. We see his zeal moved him to challenge and defeat ungodly Goliath of Gath by the power of God. So he was zealous about this. I mean, they weren't even going to go out and meet Goliath. They were just going to kind of give up, because who was going to defeat him? Who was going to stand against this giant? And David says, "Isn't there a cause? Don't we have a cause here? This is our country. This is our nation. Shouldn't we stand up and fight regardless who it is? Don't we have the ability to trust God in our dealings with this giant?" See, that's what everybody forgot. Saul forgot it. The rest of them forgot it. All they were scared, humanly speaking, that this giant was going to defeat them, and they were ready to give up. And David said, No. We have to have a zeal for our country. That's why it's so important, even right now, that we have a zeal for America. Even though it's kind of going by the wayside, we still should have a zeal. So David's enthusiasm and zeal were tempered by complete confidence in God. And there's where people fail. There's why we don't have zeal, because we don't have the confidence that we should have in serving God. Now, if we were to do that, just imagine what we could accomplish. As believers, we ought to likewise be zealously engaged in defending and upholding the name of God by answering his call to stand in the gap. And we won't turn there, but we can turn there. Ezekiel 22. Ezekiel chapter 22 and verse 30. "And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none." So God's saying to Ezekiel, who's going to fill this gap? And the same way we got right now, okay? We've got a situation with our country. Who's going to fill the gap? If we don't fill the gap, there's nobody who's going to fill that gap, because they don't care. They would rather see America waste away than fill the gap. And that's the problem that we face today. Who's going to fill the gap? Well, I have to believe that that's why Christians are here. We're here. We're here to defend our nation. We're here to defend our beliefs. We're here to defend the Bible. There should be never a time when one person has taken the Bible out of the school, I believe 1963, and they took the Bible out of school. Then later on in the 70s, they took prayer out of school. And now they're trying to get I don't know if it went through or not, but I think it did. they took the Bible out of the library at the school because it's vulgar and profanity. But yet, as I was telling Sister Melissa before we started, but yet we allow the children to have cell phones. They can get on there and watch. They can listen, and they can read anything they want to read. But yet the Bible is vulgar and considered to be wicked and evil. So our priorities are right. And where's the outcry? Where's the Christian? We can watch the news all day long and all we hear is the excuses. Or we hear, well, this is what should be done, or this is what we ought to do, but nobody is doing it. That's the aggravating part. If they would just do it. Somebody get a hold of it and do it. But you would think there'd be enough religious groups out there to make a stand and say, we're not going to do this. At least, and probably to our shame, even though I know Brother Cockrell, he said we should never protest publicly. We can still do it prayerfully. But I'm glad, and again, to our shame, the Catholic group opposed Dodger Stadium. And I was glad to see that somebody was going to do it, and stand their ground against that garbage that, the Pride Night or whatever it was that they did. So that's kind of to our shame. Where were the Baptists? Where were other religious groups? And it goes back to, I think they put the blinders on. As long as they can't see it or hear it, then they're fine with it. They're home cozy in their homes. They don't have to worry about watching the Dodgers play on TV or whatever. But that's not going to take care of the situation. So, an essential element of enthusiasm is serving the Lord is enjoyment and gladness. Enjoyment and gladness. It bothers me when I see Christians dragging around acting as if serving the Lord is the most miserable and burdensome task they could ever engage in. And that's, a lot of them feel that way. It's a burden, Of course, I learned the lesson way, way back when I first was saved, the saying, well, I can't go on Sunday because I got to go to church. Well, it's not a thing about a matter of you got to. You should be saying, well, I want to go to church tomorrow. Nothing's going to interfere with that. And be enthusiastic about that. Be excited about it. I get to go to church. Right now we get to go to church. There may come a time when we may not get to go to church. We may be in prison. Who knows what's going to happen in the long run of things. So we really need to be careful, and God really knows if we're putting ourselves to be miserable or burdensome. If it's a burdensome thing to go to church. If it's a burdensome thing to serve God. If it's a burdensome thing to read the Bible. We ought to display an attitude of joy and praise as we serve God. And let's look at a few verses of Scripture here. And Deuteronomy chapter 33. Deuteronomy 33 and verse 26. Deuteronomy 33 and verse 26. There is none like unto the God of Jezreel, who rideth upon the heaven in thy help, and in his excellency on the sky. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And he shall thrust out the enemy from before thee, and shall say, destroy them. Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon a land of corn and wine. Also his heavens shall drop down dew. Happy art thou, O Israel, who is like unto thee, O people saved by the Lord, the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellency, and thine enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. Now turn over to Psalm 32. Psalm 32, and look at verse 11. Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, ye righteous, and shout for joy, all ye that are upright in heart. And then the next chapter there in verse 1. Rejoice in the Lord, O ye righteous, for praise is comely for the upright. And then turn over to 122 of Psalms, 122 and verse 1. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. That should be our attitude every Sunday. That should be our attitude even before we get there, that we should be glad to be in the house of the Lord. There shouldn't be one of us here today that is dreading and thinking that, oh, I could be doing this at home, I could be doing that at home. We should be so glad and thankful that we're in the house of the Lord and be ecstatic about it and be able to go out and tell everybody, well, you know what I did today? I went to church. Go to work tomorrow and say, you know what I did yesterday? I went to church. And that's what should be our attitude about being here this morning. Now look at Acts chapter 2 and verse 46. Acts 2 and verse 46. You know, we complain sometimes, I think, about, man, we got 3 services today. We got Wednesday service. But look at this. This is what happened in the early church. And they continuing daily with one accord in the temple, then breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. They continued there daily. And they did it daily. Well, we can't do that daily. Well, why not? Why? What is keeping us from doing it? Well, I got to work. Well, you don't work all day. But see, you come home from work and it's like, well, I don't want to go out. You know, I don't have to go out again. So we could never do that, because with that kind of attitude, then that's what we would do. But it shouldn't be the attitude. Our attitude should be that this is who we are together, and we should be enjoying that together with each other on a daily basis. Another element, and I'll close with this, another element of enthusiasm is excitement. You know, we don't have to jump over pews. We don't have to get in the middle of the aisle and dance. We don't have to do all these other things that some are doing. We don't have to do that to get excited or enthusiastic about serving God. Believers should be excited about their privilege, and it is a privilege to serve God as well as our prospect of glory. You know, I run across people, you know, I don't like living here. You know, nobody, you know, that's fine. Nobody said you had to. See, you're being allowed to live here. Okay? Nobody's making you live here. So if you don't like it, leave. You know, well, I don't like America. Well, that's fine too. If you don't like America, get out. You know, I can't count how many probably can't count, if I take my shoes off, how many people when Bush was running, well, if he's elected again, I'm going to leave the country. Well, you're still here, and man, I wish you would have left, So the same thing is with everything we have. It's like, go back to the man who didn't want to, he said, I hate leading singing. I don't understand that concept. If you hate it, don't do it. If you can't do it for the glory of God, then why are you doing it? Don't do it. If you can't be enthusiastic and be excited about doing it, then give it to somebody else that can be or would be excited or privileged, to be able to do it. So it's like, where is the excitement? Where is the enthusiasm for coming here today? I hope you have it. And I hope when you leave that you'll get excited about being here and what you've heard and what you have done to participate in the services today. You're dismissed.